Welcome back to another Champion Deep Dive. Today, we're talking about Spider-Man Supreme. So what happens when Peter Parker gets bit by a spider linked to an ancient artifact? You get a Web-Slinging Master of the mystic arts, ready to copy buffs, steal power, and burst down the competition. Now, let's get into it! Spider-Man Supreme enters the contest with Spider Seal, where both champions' first medium attack grants an indefinite Spider Seal buff to the opponent that has no effect. These stack up to 20 times. Also, each unique buff on the opponent reduces their ability power rate by 33%. The power denied from the opponent is transferred to Spider-Man Supreme instead. Spider-Man Supreme also has the Blessing of the Astral Form, activating when the opponent gains a Spider Seal, Unblockable, or Unstoppable buff, causing incoming attacks to miss for 3 seconds. Nullifying Spider Seal buffs will also trigger this blessing. This blessing cannot be refreshed, and if a miss is triggered, this effect goes on cooldown for 20 seconds. This cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds for each unique buff active on the opponent, to a minimum of 10 seconds. However, if the opponent has an unblockable buff, this cooldown is ignored. While this blessing is active, Spider-Man Supreme is able to block, unless the opponent has an unblockable buff. Now, intercepting the opponent during this blessing grants 3 Spider Seal buffs to the opponent. Next up, Spider-Man Supreme has the Blessing of the Spider Totem, where when the opponent gains a buff, Spider-Man Supreme gains a Totem Charge. And at 20 totems, he activates this blessing for 20 seconds. But as a defender, Spider-Man Supreme will activate this blessing after 10 totems. While this blessing is active, Spider-Man Supreme's first medium attack nullifies Spider Seal buffs instead of granting them, dealing a burst of energy damage each time a nullification occurs. Additionally, he gains increased attack rating, and his combat power rate is reduced by 70%. However, he gains 25% of his max power every 9 seconds. Now, when the opponent gains a buff, they also gain a Spider Seal buff, and Spider-Man Supreme pauses this blessing for 1 second. This pause also triggers whenever a Spider Seal buff is nullified. Finally, Spider-Man Supreme has the Blessing of the Web. Heavy attacks grant this blessing for 15 seconds, and each time the opponent gains a Fury, Precision, Cruelty, Armor Up, or Pierce buff, Spider-Man Supreme gains that same buff with 20% potency for 10 seconds. Additionally, if the opponent gains a regeneration buff, Spider-Man Supreme gains that same buff, granting 2.2% of his max health over 10 seconds. As a defender, Spider-Man Supreme gains this blessing after 15 seconds, unless he's struck by a heavy attack. When Spider Seal buffs are nullified, the Mystic Dispersion Mastery, if active, doesn't grant power. Instead, it deals a burst of energy damage for every 1% of power not gained, scaling up with higher levels of the mastery. Bursts of energy damage, personal passive effects, and buffs cannot have their ability accuracy modified. Now let's check out his special attacks. The Special 1. On each hit of this special attack, Spider-Man Supreme grants 1 Spider Seal buff to the opponent. If Blessing of the Web is active, the last hit of this special attack inflicts the Curse of the Web, reducing the potency of all Fury, Precision, Cruelty, Armor Up, Regeneration, and Pierce buffs by 95% for 20 seconds. With the Special 2, the last 3 hits deal a burst of energy damage. And if the Blessing of the Spider Totem is active, each hit nullifies 1 Spider Seal buff and deals a burst of energy damage per buff nullified. Both of these effects can activate through the opponent's block. The Special 3. Spider-Man Supreme inflicts a root passive on the opponent for 4 seconds. While rooted, any contact made power steals for 2% of the opponent's current power. And Spider-Man Supreme gains 100% of the power stolen. Additionally, any contact grants Spider Seal buffs to the opponent. Now let's check out his signature ability. When awakened, the Blessing of the Astral Form grants Spider-Man Supreme up to 15% of his max power each time its cooldown is triggered. Additionally, the Blessing of the Spider Totem increases the potency of burst damage by up to 50%. And the Blessing of the Web increases the potency of granted buffs by up to 50%. Now let's swing on over to the champion rotation. To begin, focus on attacking the defender with your first medium attack to place Spider Seal buffs on the defender, and start building your Spider Totems. From here, use a heavy attack to activate the Blessing of the Web, to copy the opponent's buffs as they gain them throughout the fight. Once you reach 20 Spider Totems, build to your Special 2 and launch when available to nullify buffs off of your opponent and deal a crushing amount of energy burst damage. Continue using your first medium attack to nullify buffs off of the defender and pause your Blessing while building back up to your Special 2. Rinse and repeat until the opponent is knocked out. When fighting an opponent with minimal or no buff gain, continue the same process of using your first medium attack to stack totems and seals. However, launch your Special 1 to place additional Spider Seal buffs on each hit. Repeat if necessary, while building up 20 stacks of your Spider Totems. Once ready, build up to your Special 2 and continue the process of nullifying the Spider Seal buffs that you placed with your Special 2 and first medium attacks. Now let's check out some notable synergies. The Supremes. With Symbiote Supreme, or Sorcerer Supreme on the team, granting Spider Seal buffs to an opponent that has no buffs, or only Spider Seal buffs, inflicts a burst of energy damage equal to 10% of Spider-Man Supreme's attack. With Symbiote Supreme, each time a stagger expires without nullifying a buff, he gains 15 genetic potential. As for Sorcerer Supreme, special attacks inflict an energy vulnerability debuff, reducing energy resistance by 1200 for 7.5 seconds. From the contest. With Overseer, Venom the Duck, Venom Pool, or Morningstar on the team, whenever Spider-Man Supreme lands a critical hit, he'll also grant a Spider Seal buff onto the opponent. With Overseer, he gains immunity to neutralize effects. With Venom the Duck, when a symbiote buff is consumed, he has a 25% chance to re-trigger that same buff. With Venom Pool, he gains Special Lock immunity, and this immunity counts for his illogical DNA ability. And as for Morningstar, her Special 2 attack deals an extra burst of energy damage per captured soul. Into the Villainverse. With Kraven, Vulture, Carnage, or Electro on the team, the Blessing of the Spider Totem also grants additional critical rating. With Kraven, when a trap activates, inflict an Infuriate debuff on the opponent for 4 seconds. With Vulture, basic attacks have a 25% chance to grant 10 Kitari charges. With Carnage, he increases his permanent mutation buff's max stack to 8. And as for Electro, when attacking, he has a 20% chance to inflict a shock passive on himself and the opponent, dealing 30% of his attack as energy damage over 10 seconds. Into the Spider-Verse. With Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man Stealth Suit, and Spider-Man Stark Enhanced on the team, buffs granted by the Blessing of the Web have a 25% chance to trigger twice. With Spider-Man 2099, his debuff pause duration is increased by 3 seconds. With Spider-Gwen, her Enervate duration from Special 1 lasts 1.75 seconds longer. With Spider-Man Stealth Suit, he'll purify 1 debuff each time he evades or dodges an attack. And as for Spider-Man Stark Enhanced, the cooldown on his EMP web shot is reduced by 7.5 seconds. Did you see a synergy that'd be a blessing to your roster? Thinking of a new synergy team? Let us know your thoughts below, and let's discuss. Thank you for watching this Champion Deep Dive for Spider-Man Supreme. And hey, if you liked the video and want to see more, click subscribe, like, comment, and share. And remember, we'll see you in the battle realm.